Welcome to the Backpacking Bushers podcast. My name is Carl Mandrioli, and with me today, my co-host, Ben McAuliffe. How's it going, man?
It's going good. It's been kind of crazy lately. I've been in the river the past couple of days, and you don't want to be in the Klamath River right now this time of year. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Why? Okay. Why have you been in the river? You're just like,
Uh,
I'm going to the river even though I'm not wanting to be. That doesn't make any sense.
do you not just go in the river on your weekends off? Or
Not typically.
Yeah, so I'm on the volunteer fire department here, and we've had two cars go in the river in two separate instances, and one was a mile from the house, and both of them were like Dukes of Hazards, where there was no brake, no skid marks. They just missed the turn, fell asleep or something, went right off the side of the embankment, and didn't even hit the embankment, just right into the river. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got called to show up and help with traffic and check for injuries. The person left the scene, so they were okay. And while we're
they just
standing
left their car. They're like, somebody else can get the car out of the
someone
water.
else's problem, right? No, I think they want to get checked out because they were like supposedly on scene, but before we got there, they like left to go to the hospital, and Cal Fire intercepted them like 35 minutes down the river. So
okay, kind of interesting. So, all right, today we've got Timber Cleghorn. He is a contestant on the current season of Alone. This dude is awesome. We've built him as the most interesting man in the world, and I don't know if we're overselling this. I think this is accurate. What do you think?
Yeah, doing a little show prep. He definitely has a story to tell. So I'm excited to hear about his background, his past, and what led him to be on Alone.
Yeah, I don't think it's a story to tell. I think he's got lots of stories. I think we're just gonna, like scratch the surface today. So I mean, he grew up in some sort of like militia camp. He's a freelance humanitarian who's going into the war zones, and then he goes on the show Alone. There's just a lot going on there.
I want to ask him, like, of the militia camp, the humanitarian, or Alone, like, which one's the hardest? Because they all like
out of those three.
Do I want to? Yeah. What would you pick? Would you rather do the humanitarian in the war zone or militia camp or Alone?
I mean, the humanitarian stuff is definitely more up my alley. The other two I don't want to do at all, especially like growing up in a militia camp. But I don't think you have a choice when you're growing up. So, yeah, that's an interesting question. But yeah, I mean, we're going to ask them all sorts of questions. I've started to give you that, like, kind of the intro, like, first question out. What you got? I remember the one that you asked crew was, I don't even know if it's a question, but you're just like, hey, or what was it like? What would you say to somebody like Carl who thinks that MMA is fake, right? Was that the question?
Well, is that the question? Yeah, that was a question. What would you say?
Yeah, that was okay. So that's pretty funny. So, all right, I'm nervous because I'm giving, like, this is like a pretty big time guest. He's on a TV show, for goodness sake. So I want you, okay, I want to make sure, clean question, one sentence, just like crew. I don't care if you accuse me of something, out the gate. Are you up for that challenge?
I'm up for it. I better write it down. I've been thinking about it all night. But yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully I word it right. Yeah.
Pressure's on. All right. And then in our tidbit section, we're going to talk about our two least favorite survival type shows out there. Alone's not one of them. We like Alone, but yeah, two of our least favorite survival type shows. And then it's the month of November, folks. So we're going to do a giveaway a week. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to be a finalist or to really achieve the giveaway here. So we'll talk about the criteria for that. We're giving away a tent. So that's coming up as well. All right. So this episode is brought to you by Enlightened Equipment. If you're going to survive the toughest conditions in the world, you will need the premium ultralight quilts and jackets made by one of the best companies on earth. Check them out at enlightenedequipment.com. And Ben, do you have the Bible verse for this episode?
I do. It comes from Psalm 25:14 through 18. My eyes are ever toward the Lord, for he will pluck my feet out of the net. Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. So my question to you, Carl, is have you ever had him pluck your feet out of a net?
Like, have I been inside a net?
Yeah.
Or have I just been caught up by something?
Yeah,
I don't think I've been in a net. So I'm imagining the Star Wars, like Return of the Jedi, where they get kind of grabbed by the net there.
Oh, yeah.
And that hasn't happened. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I've been in some tight circumstances for sure. And usually chaos ensues. So I'll have to really reflect on that. That's a good question. Have you been in a net before?
No, I was thinking the same thing of like Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, when they're like in the net and their feet are dangling, and then
Right.
Splinter shoots them down and they, take on the Foot Clan.
Common,
Yeah.
common reference
But
there. Common
I
reference.
think the
Okay.
only time like I think of actually like net is I got stuck in mud when I was 10 when I went to the creek, and that got a little sketchy, but that was about it.
Yeah. Speaking of being stuck, we've got Timber Cleghorn coming up right now. He's a freelance humanitarian. He's a contestant on History Channel season 11 alone, and he is perhaps the most interesting man in the world. Timber Cleghorn, how's it going, sir?
It's going wonderful, man, and thanks for those kind things. That's too much to say. I'm just a bozo from the sticks.
I don't know about that, because as I dug into researching, I think you got quite a lot of stories to share for sure. We're just gonna be scratching the surface today, but it's an honor to have you on the show, my friend.
Well, thank you. Very, very glad to be here.
Yeah, super excited. So I'll start with the first question right out of the gate, because I always like to just throw the nice, fun questions to the guests. Easy, softball.
Just ask the question, Ben.
So Carl lives in suburbia, and he does these like podcast videos for our podcast, really cool short videos, and he sets up the cameras, but he's always comparing himself to you being on Alone, where you had to set up the cameras too. Would you say that's similar or not? Like
Doing like setting up his shots in suburbia. Oh, dude. Firstly, I don't know much about setting up camera shots. I have such bad luck in filming. Usually things break. I set a record on Alone for the most broken cameras. So I don't think you should try to do it like me. Yes, I broke the most cameras in the history of the show, that tipped over into the river, splashed in the water, got rained in, just got broken.
They're not waterproof?
Well, the GoPros are waterproof, but that larger camera that they want you to capture as much as you can with the bigger camera, so that it's better quality footage, not just GoPros,
Right.
And that camera just kept dying on me because I was a little rough on it, So I have terrible luck in filming. I've messed around with it all my life, or all my adult life, but I wouldn't try to emulate what I do, because you'll run out of cameras.
But wait, no. But how many cameras is that? How many did you break?
Well, I broke at least 4 or 5 of those main cameras. Yeah.
And you're talking like the cameras that are thousands of dollars a piece, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've broken lots of GoPros.
I tried my hardest to generate good content for them to pay for those cameras I was breaking. That's what the motivation was when I did like music videos and stuff.
So when they showed up to replace your cam, they're like, "It's okay. You're such an awesome contestant. We don't even mind. Here you go. Here's the box, fresh out of the box, brand new one."
That's close to what they said the first time, just trying to encourage me. The second time, it was a little bit more muted than that. The third, fourth, and fifth times, they just looked. They were not very happy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Are you an idiot?
Were you breaking the cameras because you were like able to figure out how to get like food delivered to you in DoorDash, or
I'm just like holding the tripod, cameras on the end of it, and I think, man, I'd like to see a human today. There's a treat. Smash! That's how it went.
That's actually not a bad idea.
No, it was like squishy mud, and I get the tripod set up out there, and it looks boring. It looks like a shot I'd done before, but I have a fish on a line. I want to reel it in. So I put the camera out in the water, in the mud, on the tripod, and I go get the fish, and I'm pulling the fish in. I'm like, this is going to look cool. I hear this splash, splash, and the mud has sunk, from beneath the tripod legs, and over went the camera into the river. It mostly was stuff like that.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great answer. The question, super confusing. So in light of that, I would like to pre-apologize for any other confusing questions that Ben asked for the duration of the conversation. Hopefully we can make it clear, because I don't know what you were asking, Ben.
I want Ben to
was asking if he thought
usually it's boring stuff like, how many kids do you have? How old are you? I'm like,
no, I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No. It's all about, for me, I always have like a different alternative motive in the interview, and it's always like, how can I make Carl look, I look better than Carl. So that's always the point.
Thank you, Ben.
Well, now you've just made me suspicious about all your future questions, but let's do them.
All right. So talk about the show Alone. Like you kind of like planted these seeds, when you're doing kind of these self-interviews about a pretty intense childhood. And you mentioned a little bit on your YouTube channel as well, but you basically say that you grew up in a militia camp, and you're very careful about how, you talk about how you kind of you were living in fear of the government and you didn't know how that was going to play out. But can you give us like a typical day in the life of a 10-year-old in that kind of setting?
Yeah, I can. And thanks for choosing an age, 10 years old. That's a good one because, an entire childhood really changes. A life growing up like 18, 19 years, whatever, it really changes throughout that. And
Oh
so when I
yeah.
say I grew up in a militia camp, people want to see me, in a camp from the time I was born to the time I escaped, right? Well, it's not quite how
Right.
it was. But at 10 years old, we definitely were heavily focused on training ourselves and our close group of families, to survive the apocalypse, Armageddon. The black helicopters were gonna suck us out the chimney and experiment on us, and kill all the parents and
Okay.
stuff. That
Wow.
kind of thing. Now, this was a weird time in it's late 80s, early 90s, and the government had just done some things like, the Waco, Texas massacre, Ruby Ridge
Oh, yeah.
shootings
Right.
and stuff like this. Everybody was real suspicious. So, but you can understand people taking that and then taking it to the furthest extreme that fear can go with it. Basically, both political fear and religious fear and cultural fear, all three of those. So at 10 years old, we did definitely do a lot of training on weapons and survival, evasion, resistance, escape, that type of training. We did a lot, but that wasn't every day. What was every day was more of resilience training with, and a lot of it actually came off as off-grid living work, and so that kind of melded together, and kind of blurred into one. And I guess I can sum it up by saying two things. At 10 years old, like every day of my life was mostly controlled with fear for sure, and then every moment was work. I'd never played a game of ball growing up. Never, there was no neighbors, there were nothing to go to. It was, you were working constantly, like working like a man, or you didn't eat. So,
Right.
a lot of resilience training thrown with that. I remember, cutting wood and we were rolling these logs by hand, huge red oak butt logs, trying to get them up onto trucks and stuff. And I thought, man, we'll be killed by this. But you were driven. And my brother, he was a little guy at the time, like 5, fell and bit the end of his tongue almost off. It was like hanging and blood coming out of it. And instead of being like, oh, let's take care of you, go to the house, it was, don't you make a sniffle, boy. You get up and you
Oh,
do
man.
this. And
Okay.
so that's kind of the feeling and the vibe. But living survival does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of work. It wasn't all just kind of like a intentional pressure. It's required by life a lot. You think of the folks in previous centuries, it's a hard life.
Yes. So they weren't like
Oh, man.
tying you up in a dark room and saying, if you want to eat today, you got to escape. No, nothing like that.
No, not quite like that. I think that happened in our group, but not to me.
Wow.
To me, it was more like more weapons, focused and rural evasion and escape focused. There were drills, where you'd be given a very small patch, like something about as big as somebody's yard in the woods, and be like, we're all going to, everybody's going to hunt you in here, and you've got 1 minute. You'd be, you'd be all freaked out and be like, I've got to get away, and then training like light, low visibility fires in the rain and stuff like this. So there was not, it wasn't the kind of thing that you're describing, where kids are, strapped up and bludgeoned half to death and, that kind of thing. No.
Okay. So
Wow.
if you talk about the like the Armageddon or the apocalypse, late 80s, 90s. So I'm thinking 3 that kind of chronologically happened, not too far out. I don't know if this was like on your radar. Were people concerned about like the Hale-Bopp comet, Y2K, or like the Mayan calendar? Were any of those like
Oh,
on
definitely.
the
All
radar?
3 of those came into play, and lots of other
Wow.
stuff, but those 3 were definitely there. But just every single thing, when a family goes into a culture of fear, maybe drawn from their view of God and from their view of politics together, every single aspect of life snowballs with that fear and reacts worse and worse, and it can turn into a monster. Several of the children that I knew growing up in our circle killed themselves or each other, tried to commit suicide. Maybe some survived,
Wow.
and so, basically, fear-based culture is what I'd like to stay away from these days.
That's
Yeah.
Even though I
how-
believe in some of the core principles of like have skills, that's great. have a strong faith in God. I believe in those things, but you know, a culture of fear takes all of those and twists it into a monster.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
how do you overcome that fear? Like, I mean, I hear stories about people that like, I mean, they're living in fear constantly, you know, even as adults. Are you still overlooking your shoulder or?
You know, that's an interesting question. There were two phases as I came out of that fear. And first was when it just turned to anger. Because as a mid-teen, you know, you can't just accept that fear forever. At some point, with no outlet to it, I just became an angry person. So like incredibly angry and violent. And that became my goal, to join the Marine Corps and get into a place eventually where I could hurt people and kill people, and never come home again. You know, I was just going to be gone, you know,
Yeah.
join the Marine Corps. I wanted to hurt people. And it was because of that, you know, anger. And, you know, then basically meeting God, what I think is like a real and refreshing glimpse of God, changed that. And I can tell you about that sometime if you want. Like, it helped me to see life and like a glimpse of God that's not just hovering over you, ready to squish you with a hammer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
if you got time right now, we'd be happy to hear that story.
Yeah.
You know, ironically, it happened in Ukraine, which is cool because I end up back in Ukraine, very connected in this story. But it happened in Ukraine. There was a church group going, and this was in the middle of my hateful, angry days. Hated God, hated the idea of God. You know, all this, hated everybody, hated myself. And some group was like, we're going to send volunteers, church volunteers to Ukraine. We're going to work with orphanages. And I was sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I hate this, you know. And my hand went up, and the guy was like, okay, you'll go. Well, they signed my name up, and I was like, what am I doing? You know, I looked at my hand, I tried to pull my hand down, and it wouldn't come down. And then I was too embarrassed to say that I'd made a mistake, so I went because of that.
Wow.
And I'm in Ukraine, angry, and I began to see these orphans, from orphanage to orphanage where we went with the volunteers. These orphans were definitely people who did live in fear, and even more than that, lived without a sense of value at all. They were completely unwanted by anybody, barely fed at all, barely cared for. And I saw that in their eyes, both the fear and the complete lack of value. I saw it in their eyes, and I knew it was me. It freaked me out. I knew that was me. So then, you know, day by day, I began to see like the workers, and they would speak to these kids, and they would, you know, one of the boys there said, "Why are you here? Why are you doing this?" And the volunteer responded, "Well, because God made you and loves you," you know, basically saying that you're valuable.
Yeah.
And I'm here
Right.
to express that, you know, to be a part of that. And this kid believed right then. He believed what the person was saying. And that fear went away from his eyes. That there was like a light. I can't really explain this unless you've seen it. You know, there was like a light that sprang on in his eyes, and he knew that he was valued. It might have been the first time anybody had ever told him that he was valued.
Oh man.
I saw that in his eyes, and I wanted it so much for me. I was so tired of hating myself, you know, of hating everyone. And I wanted that. And so I like pray to God, you know, and I'm like, what is this all about? And then time after time, I saw it again and again. And that both brought me to a view of God that says to me, I created you and it's good. You know, seek me and I'll give you life. And, you know, it brought me to that view. And it also brought me to trying to do humanitarian aid work around the world, because I want nothing more than to see that the fear go away in people's eyes, and for that light to kind of spring on. It's selfish in me to want it so much. I want to see that more than anything, man.
That's
everybody
really
wants to
cool.
be.
Yeah, I hear
people want to be valued, and they want to be loved. I mean, wherever they are in any community, and people are searching for that across the world, and you can have that anywhere, is what you're saying. But it just you had to be introduced to that concept, or introduced to that idea.
Yeah. And that introduction was so sharp and stark to me that it impacted me. I stood in the woods there in Ukraine once. We were kind of stopping between places and went out in the woods, and there was a place that had been a World War II battlefield, trenches dug in zigzag patterns all through the woods, half filled in, you know, bomb shell holes. And I came across these two giant mounds of dirt, and the top was all sunken in. And I climbed on top of one, and I looked, and there was a stone, and it read in Cyrillic and in English that 2,000 civilians were buried under each mound of dirt. And having just realized that God values people. He created and values people that much. I mean, that felt really wrong to me. And I stood on those, or I climbed down instantly, and then I prayed to God and I said, if you could use my life, meaningless and hopeless life that it is, at the time, for people in this situation, to maybe save them or to just show them love, like I've been seeing happen to the orphans, I said, I'll give you every scrap of whatever I am. And I think that must be when I became a believer. That must have been that moment,
Wow.
And it's
Okay.
so cool because this past, in February of 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and I got invited to go back with a bunch of medic buddies, and we were working there, and I got to help evacuate exactly the same orphanage that I was staying with when I finally
Oh
was there.
man.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
Helping
gave
them
me chills,
save.
cried, and I was like, God hears my voice, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. So
that's awesome.
interesting you went back, because you're talking about this concept of like, living in fear and just, kind of not knowing what's in the shadows or around the corner. But you then became a freelance humanitarian, where it seems like if you're going to places like Ukraine, especially in times of war, you're thrusting yourself back into that environment in a different capacity, it sounds like. So what do you do as a freelance humanitarian?
Well, I got into it as a research linguist. When I came back from Ukraine all those years ago, it stayed in my heart, and I wanted to be doing work. I knew I wanted to be doing work overseas where people were, where maybe I could find people in dire need. It's not to say we don't have needy people here in the States, but it's just different when there's less infrastructure around a need. I wish everywhere in the world was like North Carolina right now, where people would flock to it. But unfortunately, that's not the case. There's places with disasters just
Right.
like that nobody's going to. And that's why I say overseas. So I knew I wanted that. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Because I don't know anything. When I left home, I didn't know how to order food at McDonald's. I did not know how to speak to humans. I didn't know how to interface with the world at all. And I was like, well, what do I do then? So I enrolled in this program that was like a specialty research linguist training center. And I was like, dude, this is cool. I love languages. This will take me overseas. And it did. I went overseas and found out throughout Asia, there's a lot of tribal languages that are really struggling, very poor people, underdeveloped village areas that are being confronted with the modern world, but their language and culture get shredded first, gutted by industrialization. They lose their identity. It leads to a lot of drug addictions, alcohol addictions, problems. And I said, I know what I can do. So I put that linguistic major to work right away, tried to help reduce some of these languages to writing, help them with their literacy programs, reading materials, education. Because there's these little tiny cultures everywhere, hundreds and hundreds of them, all throughout Asia and other parts of the world, where they're just being totally destroyed, and suffering a lot of consequences by our giant industrialized world that we live in. Right. So that's what led me into international work. That was my first jobs. I was working on developing alphabets for unwritten languages in Central Asia to South Asia to, towards East Asia as well.
Wow. Yeah.
And then that brought me face to face with conflict zones. And then I realized that kind of because of my background, I'm cut out for it. I'm not a veteran. I can't say that, I don't have that, but I have something else. I'm comfortable in a conflict zone. I know what to do. I know when to duck and when to run. I know how to be calm. And so there I found people that were truly, truly hurting. And I said, I found myself here. And that's where I started doing, just trying to go more towards conflict zone and disaster work.
Okay.
And were you doing that by yourself or with your family?
Usually my family's with me. So, on our linguistic research projects, I would have my family with me every time because it's a long project. It can take years. And my wife, it has the same linguistic major that I do. It's where we met. And so she wants to be there doing it. Our kids, they love being in the cultures there where they were raised as little kids. My 7-year-old Elliot just wants to go back to Tajikistan right now because that's what he loves the most, the culture and the place and people.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But yeah, my family would be with me. But then when I go to places like the Ukraine war or working with some of the Afghanistan refugees as the Taliban were chasing them, I do not take my family into those situations. I try to bring them to bring them to the rear, put them in a different city, get them set up with a community. And then I go kind of alone with buddies, really.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask that. Like, how do you keep them safe? Because we've done work in Mexico where, you drive across the border and the gangs know you. Like they roll down their windows, like, "Oh, it's you. We know where you're going." It's like,
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
with kids in the vehicle, it gets a little sketchy. You're like, "Is this what I should be doing right now with my kids?"
right. Well, in every case, in every place I go to, I try my hardest to work with official forces if I can. So on the Afghanistan border, I'm friends with a lot of the Tajik colonels that are in charge of manning that border river, and we're just personal friends, and they've been with my family many times. Um, as we travel up and down that area, we'll sit in a village and we'll just eat and drink with the army officers and stuff like that. And then you just have this rapport,
Yeah.
and they're like, Timber, if anything ever happens or if you need anything, here's my number. You call me. I can bring 200 guys, or whatever. And so that's
Wow. Wow. Okay. There,
Oh.
there's a movie called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Have you seen that by any chance?
a friend just urged me recently to go watch it, and I did. I
Oh, you
loved it.
did?
Yeah, I want to
Okay.
be like him when I grow up, if I can.
Well, that's what Carl. I think Carl's gonna.
You're,
ask,
first of all,
is that
you're
true?
already you're who he wants to be in that movie because you're the one that's already experienced the world. But then he gives cake to Afghan warlords to pass so he can climb up the mountains. Is that real?
Oh yeah, I mean it can be like I usually take some gifts. I know what they like, what they can't get. They're out there for
Okay.
weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time with their platoon, or with their however many guys they've got. And
Right.
man, you really start to want certain things. Like for us it'd be
Right.
coffee, and for
Oh,
them it's
yeah.
just different commodities. And so I stock up on those things. And I take them with me. And when I see them, I'm like, hey, how's your family? How's your, I try to memorize their kids' names and stuff. And I'm like, here's this, and then we're kind of buds,
Well, no, but so what are you giving? Are you giving him like persimmon cake like in the movie, or what are you giving these guys?
Moose jerky usually. No, I'm not kidding.
Moose jerky. You had some left over from Alone.
That's right.
I do. I have some in here in the kitchen. I'm
What?
eating
Are you serious? That's awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
Well,
awesome.
whatever snacks that their family would really enjoy, from like it's baklava, the Turkish baklava or stuff like that.
Okay.
And there's been times when I had cigarettes as well in that loadout, and don't hold that against
Okay.
me. It's happened though. So just a mix of a lot of stuff like that.
Interesting.
I want the
Mention
beef
alone.
jerky now. I want that moose. If you want to be friends with us, like I'm okay with getting a moose beef
I've
jerky.
got a small quantity left, but dude, I mean, we set up something. I can send you a piece.
And just to clarify, Ben thinks that beef jerky and moose jerky are the same thing. Like he thinks it comes from the same animal. So just FYI.
Well, pretty much when you open a bag of Jack Links, it says beef, but usually it's a moose in there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. We should talk about Alone because he's definitely have some stories from that, and we're gonna probably just, like I said, scratch the surface here. But I want to start with like the 10 items you chose to bring. I always find this part fascinating. They actually have a separate episode that I think you can stream where it just kind of goes through all the different contestants and then like, here's what I brought and here's why I brought it. So I've got a few.
And we're too lazy.
questions
We're too lazy to do that, so we'd rather just have you tell us.
No,
and
no,
those
no,
ones
no,
that
no.
the history filmed are boring anyways. The
No,
contestants
no.
weren't even
I-
thinking about their items at that point. They just wanted to leave.
I found it fascinating. Okay, so here's what you got. So you got a saw, you've got an axe, you've got bow and arrows.
Yep.
But then you mentioned your cast iron cooking pot, and it was the pot that you said you wanted to use to attack a bear with. Out of all those items, is that your plan, or was that your plan?
Dude, I didn't plan to say that. I forgot that I did say it. When I was watching that, I was like, who is this idiot?
No, I loved it. I'm like, that's my kind of guy. Just smash it.
If you can picture yourself attacking a bear with those little thin, stainless steel pots, it just wouldn't go well,
Right, right.
So pretty much you're down to cast iron. You got to take a cast iron pot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could do some damage, especially if you're like, it's like that kind of fight or flight mode and you can't like flee essentially. I think that I think you could swing pretty hard. You're motivated, you're scared. I think you could take down or at least like stun the bear. What do you think, Ben?
I'm just thinking that I probably wouldn't even have the capacity to even swing at the bear. I'd probably throw the pot at it, hoping I injure it while I'm like running away from it, doing what you're not supposed to do and run away. So
Right.
Yeah, I was
So,
thinking more along
and-
the lines
okay.
of an old Robin Hood movie. I kept mine full of boiling water to throw at the bear. I basically made a bomb. Flaming molten spruce
so-
pitch. I was going to set the bear on fire, really, with the pot.
Oh my god.
So if you get attacked by the bear and like you're not in the capacity to hit your SOS button, call like how do they know? Like you're injured, or are they watching to see like, hey, he hasn't moved for a couple hours, or are you just kind of truly alone?
That's how they would know that evening, because morning and evening, you're supposed to send a pre-programmed message. You just punch a button on that GPS, and the message just goes beep in their office and says you're okay because you punched it.
Okay.
And so if they don't receive that, then they start to wonder. They're like, did he just forget? And that happens. Then they get really mad at you if you forget, and then they're like, hey, we almost had to send somebody.
Right.
So they've got those messages if you skip the message, but if there's really no way that they can save your life if something were to really happen,
Right.
Like
Yeah,
if
it's
Cubby
the
gets
wilderness,
on his
man.
leg, if he had hit that femoral artery, I mean, the History Channel might not want me to say this, but I mean, the dude would have been a goner, because the time there was no helicopter LZ in those dense woods. Things just don't work out right. So that was my favorite thing I found out when they launched us. Is I thought all the way up to launch time, I'm like, they're going to have something secret, not showed, that's going to like be a safety net.
Right.
Now their safety team is good at what they do, but when they drop you off, they just leave. And then you realize if a bear mauled me, I would be dead. They couldn't stop that, or they couldn't, if I was bleeding out, they couldn't even respond in enough time to save my life. So my favorite thing about it is that you could die if you wanted to.
Okay.
Oh, see, I always
Favorite
thought they had
thing
someone
about
watching
it is
out
you can
for
die if you want.
Just for how that sounded. But no, what I meant is it's real.
That's real.
That might be the best single line ever on our podcast right there. So
I just wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be like, if I want to be a frontiersman and a mountain man, I want to know I did it where I could have died.
Yeah.
So
That
when you got the moose, and we can talk about that later, but you were just using your Leatherman, like basically a multi-tool to skin it. Were you regretting not bringing a bigger knife?
Nah, because whenever I'm hunting, I always will use a fixed blade sheath knife, and skinning the moose with that would have been nice, but the Leatherman has too many other advantages I couldn't do without it. I wanted it out there, and then skinning it with that little 3-inch blade on the Leatherman, it actually wasn't that bad. It wasn't as hard as people would think, because just because of how I ergonomically how I do knife work.
Yeah,
it worked out pretty good. It wasn't that bad to butcher with it.
Okay.
I just had to sharpen it like
if
30 or 40 times.
if Carl got a moose, if Carl got a moose and he used his 1-inch blade, do you think that would be even better because it's more ergonomical?
Carl needs a sword if he gets a moose. I'm gonna say like a samurai sword. Yeah. How much you gonna gut that thing?
Yeah. We're not opposed to bringing swords to the backcountry for those of us who know our show well enough.
That'd be an interesting addition to the 10 items, a new one that no one's seen before. Someone will do it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Well, hey, speaking of that, I got a suggestion. So I know we come across just a podcast, but we're always generating new ideas, and I actually have a prototype of an invention that could be for, like hunting gear. It could be survival stuff or backpacking. So I'm going to show
this is Shark Tank right here, Timber. Just so you know, he's looking for
I'm not
investors.
looking for an investor.
I'm just wondering this. The suspense is killing me.
Okay, so this would replace your multi-tool basically. Okay, so you brought the multi-tool, and I saw you use it quite a bit, but this is called right here the tool glove.
For people listening, not watching, Carl held up a glove with a fork. What is that?
A carrot peeler?
Potato peeler?
Yeah, carrot or apple peeler.
A plastic knife?
Plasticware knife. Yes.
Yeah.
And a flathead screwdriver.
Screwdriver. So Carl took all the tools he owns and some and put them on a glove.
Yeah, you're going to make Leatherman obsolete. Oh, they're secured. Clearly very secure.
Yeah, see? So it's more efficient and it's handy. Like I bet the pencil, I bet you wanted that out there. You probably had a lot of thoughts and ideas you want to write down. Solved right here.
Oh, I would have killed for a pencil out there. Can we call this thing the Leatherman Wolverine?
Oh, there. See, Well, you can if you invest right, Timber. You can definitely call it whatever you want.
Ooh, how
That's
much?
right.
Okay, we're talking
If you
investment. There's
invest,
only
we're
one
not
thing I
looking for
do though.
investors.
If I'm
What's
going to
that?
invest, you got to let me make 1 or 2 modifications. I think the only way that can be made better is to sharpen the screwdriver into a wood chisel point and replace the butter knife with like a rolling pin. You really want a rolling pin.
The rolling
Did you
pin's
have many
genius.
uses for a screwdriver on a loan? Just out of curiosity, you come across a lot of screws and nails.
There was only 1 screw out there in the whole thing, and it was in my saw, that saw that would fold, and fortunately the back of the can opener in my multi-tool fit that as a screwdriver, because you have to maintain that, you have to tighten that screw. So I took all the screwdrivers. I really modified that. I built my Leatherman out of 3 different tools. I took three tools apart and put them together into one, and modified all the screwdrivers into chisels and pokers and awls, and pretty much it looked like that glove you've got.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize you
great.
made your own Leatherman. I just thought you bought like one that fit all the needs you wanted. I didn't realize you modified it and kind of So we're kind of the same person. We
really are. You might be my long lost brother. I was adopted when I was a kid. Where are you from originally?
You're Indiana right now, right? So not
yeah.
Okay, that's hilarious. All right, well, I appreciate you considering that. Ben, did you have any other questions about the 10 gear items?
Yeah, well, toilet paper's not on there, so that's the one I always think of, is like, when you go, but what do you use there? I like to bring action wipes, but I guess you can't bring those.
Well, have you ever seen dogs, how they'll find a patch of grass and they'll just scoot?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they'll scoot their butt that way. That's pretty much what I was doing off camera.
Oh my gosh.
Find some moss and I just get down. No, I'm kidding. I would use my axe and I would shave up the little bits of moss, and I would make wipes out of the moss, and I would have those stacked up in reserve, because you never know when you're going to need to go in the middle of the night, And then when all the moss got covered up by snow, and it was like I used it all, it was gone. And then I literally wiped with snowballs for a while. That was awesome.
You're making fun of the scooch method, but years ago I got this like how to go backpacking book at the library. Just curious what they had. I'm like, maybe they've got some good ideas in here. And it was like they had a chapter on how to go to the bathroom, and one of them was like find a patch of grass in a meadow and scooch along. Like it literally was in the book. Yeah,
they had a chapter. Wait, back up. I might need this book. They had a chapter about how to go to the bathroom.
There's whole books on that. How to go poop in the woods. There's whole books on that. We have, I think, 3 podcast episodes just on that, because everybody loves that topic.
And they are the most popular episodes. Kid you not?
They are.
You guys are killing me. All right, I need to send my kids to you for some training.
Okay. Because even so, like my son, when we go backpacking, he still wants to hold it the whole time. So I don't know that we're the experts on getting kids to go, but I guess sometimes you got to go. All right. So right now we started this new thing in our show called the lightning round. So we're going to throw questions that might reference outdoors, alone, or be just off the wall at you. And your job is to answer as many questions as you can in 1 minute. And we've done this twice so far, and both people were able to get 8 questions. So
dude. Okay.
The winner at the end of our season. Ben, what was your idea? Like, we got a prize for the person who can like legitimately answer the most questions, right?
Yeah, we have a backpacking and blisters. I don't even know how we want to say it, but like a food pack,
like care package,
survival. Yeah, like a survival package.
Yeah. And I don't want to oversell it, but it could just include the tool glove here. So there's a lot on the line.
I'm at the starting line now. Where are you getting these questions from? Are you making them up as we go?
Well, we already made them up. But they're ours for sure. They're not.
Do you have plenty? You don't just have 8 right here, right?
You have plenty
of questions in front of you.
I love the competition. I've got.
I might have added a couple more.
You might. Okay, there you go. All right. So, so are we ready to start? I'm going to start the timer once Ben reads his first question. Ben, you ready?
All right. Yep. Favorite car brand?
Ford F-150.
Okay, what would your 11th item be on a loan?
Salt.
What's more believable, Sasquatch or moon landing?
Sasquatch.
What is one country you think you'll never visit?
Not anymore. Well, I won't visit Iran, and I won't visit Russia anymore. And maybe not China.
Favorite knife?
Benchmade Adamus 275.
Do you think time travel is possible?
No, but I hope I'm wrong because it's unfair that we can't go there.
Favorite place you have been?
Inuvik, Northwest Territories, Canada, Fort Moosehead.
What food did you miss the most while in the Arctic?
Chocolate cake.
Lunchable or Hot Pockets?
Lunchable. No, Hot Pocket. I changed Hot Pocket.
How many questions is that, Ben? How many did you get out?
I got 5.
Okay, so and I got 4, or he answered 4. So 9, you're the current leader for our season. Timber, congratulations. And you got some commentary in there on some of those and still were able to answer 9 questions.
Wow.
So
I like the competitive. It's very competitive.
it is. What? All right, Ben, what was the interesting answer you want to talk about? Because there's some fun stuff in there.
There's a couple. I think the Lunchable Hot Pockets, he changed his answer. So was it the Lunchable or was it the Hot Pocket?
Well, I thought Lunchable because that's what my standard answer would have been. But after Alone, see, I've got recipes now written down on birch bark for a new kind of Hot Pocket that I invented on Alone when I was really hungry. And so I had to change the Hot Pocket because of these new Hot Pockets I'm going to make.
Oh my gosh.
Nice.
They're gonna have
So
shrimp
those are like
in them.
homemade Hot Pockets then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I liked the your answer about time travel, that you don't think it's possible, but you kind of want it to be possible. So I'm with you on that one.
Oh, I want to so
and
bad.
then, yeah, when you got back, I know like when your body's used to a certain diet, you can't just like all of a sudden gorge yourself or whatever. So how long did it take before you could stomach some chocolate cake?
Okay, so fortunately they keep you for like 10 days or something in this refeeding program, and it's intended to normalize your digestive system again, because if you just slammed a bunch of bread or carbs, you could die from it, depending on how good a shape you're in or not. I was in okay shape, but I'm glad I went through that because I had no self-control. I typically have a lot of self-control, but after I got out of that program, I went to the little town on my way home, and that night before my flight, I went down to this little store and I got a little thing of these brownies, and I'm like, I'll just eat one, but I have to buy the whole thing, because they don't sell them individually. I took it to my hotel room and I ate one, and then I ate them all.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I felt horrible. Yeah.
I would do that not having been on the show alone. I would just be like, I'm going to buy, you can only buy quantity 8. I guess I'll just eat one and save the rest, and then not save the rest. So yeah. I've got
that's
that
funny.
Yeah.
I did that with
Oreos
Oreos.
at all.
Yeah.
Oreos are big too, for sure. That's funny.
Oreos, yeah, just sleeves of them. Yeah.
All right. So I've got kind of a more serious question next, but before we get to that, folks that are watching on YouTube, we should talk about a couple of things you got in the backdrop there. So you've got a jacket, a wolfskin jacket that you made out of wolfskin from a wolf you captured in Afghanistan. Is that right?
I didn't make this jacket. A local guy did. I didn't make this jacket. A friend of mine was selling them, and they were coming out of Afghanistan. They were killing the wolves there, and it's sheep wool inside and wolf trim, and I just liked it. And so I brought it home, and that's what I wear on cold days when I'm drinking coffee out here on the porch.
Okay, so you weren't like tackling wolves and like trying to get a hold of them that way.
I did body slam this one before the guy skinned it. No, I didn't kill this one.
Okay. Wolves are just like mean dogs, right? That's all they are.
Yeah, it's nothing big.
Okay, and then you got like a musical instrument. It looks like a handmade musical instrument behind you. Is that correct?
This is from the show, and it just lives out here on my porch. I hope nobody drives by and takes it, because it just lives out here. This is old Betsy, the moose bass.
Okay,
the one-string moose bass.
So he's got a moose antler, and then it looks like a carved stick, right?
Yeah, it's like a root wad, driftwood found in the pile of driftwood from the river, and it's intended just to look ghastly, and I think it kind of does. So this is the one string bass guitar where I sing "If You Find My Body in a Cold, Cold River."
wait, did you say you're going to sing that right now? Because we're ready.
I don't think I can do it as good as I did on the show, but basically, if you find my body on the field of battle, I'll be walking. Yeah, this is a guitar from the show, anyways.
Do you think
Nice.
that I should add a guitar tuner to the multi glove? Is that, or the tool glove here? Is that that'd be helpful?
As long as it doesn't take away the rolling pin, I think a guitar tuner could
The
help
rolling pin.
bushcraft situations. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Love the guitar. Yeah, love the bass guitar. That's super cool. All right. So whether you like it or not, or want it or not, Alone gives their contestants the ability to have some sort of a platform, sometimes big, sometimes small. Like, do you have any thoughts about like how you're using it or how you intend to use your platform as somebody who's now famous in the outdoor world?
Well, I think famous is too big for me. I'm still just a bozo from the sticks. I think, I don't know how that all works there, but I can answer your question this way. I think one of my favorite results from the show is that the editors included a few of my thoughts about God, the afterlife, spirituality, and things like this. I'm a Christian, but I'm definitely not like a typical Christian. It's like maybe people have that's Christian culture from America. I think I'm a little different from that. One of my favorite things from the show is that I've got a lot of feedback and a lot of questions about that. People being like, "Look, I'm an atheist, but I'm interested in your viewpoint," and then we get to dialogue about that. And man,
That's
I
cool.
wish that in this world we would all be open and dialogue about these things, because there's deep things here, wonderful things, and we all close it down out of either embarrassment or thinking that we'll aggravate one another, and we all ought to just grow up and be open about it and be like, yeah, I think it's this, I've experienced this, or I see this from God, from creation, from his word. And that's what, if I can speak to a broader audience because of this show, that's definitely one of the things that'll always be there, because it's a part of me. I'm not like trying to put on a persona to then push that because of the show. It's just where my head is always at, because I've seen an awful lot of death in my short life, and then your thoughts kind of have to turn towards eternity, and so because of that, that's just where my thoughts are at. And secondly, I'd like to just bushcraft with some guys, small groups, and do kind of like not necessarily focus on the bushcraft skills, but focus on the internal person, building one another up,
Oh,
speaking
cool.
to
Yeah.
healing of particularly combat PTSD. I'm really passionate about that right there.
Right.
And then if I could only get one other result from the show, I just hope that people will buy the book that I've put together about it all.
Okay. Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
Yeah, so I've written this memoir, and it's going to be published in about 6 days now. It's called Memoir of a Wild Man, and it's the whole story of Alone, a deep dive into how it works and what it's all about,
Oh, cool.
plus all my weird and chaotic life all thrown in there in the mix. It tells everything of like why I'm strange and weird, why I did things on the show, how the show all works, and then what life has been like for me in all the randomness and craziness that I reference, especially like war zone work and stuff like that. So, Memoir of a Wild Man, Amazon.
Okay, so we'll have that link in the show description.
Timber, like when you're on Alone, and what was the biggest thing like God showed you? Because you said that you like reflected a lot, learned a lot about yourself, personal reflection. I'm a very outgoing person, so for me, I think like I don't know how I'd probably make it like day 2 maybe if I'm blessed by that, but like I know God would meet me there. So
Yeah.
what some of God showed you?
First, I was a terrible mess emotionally when I went out there, just from death. The amount of death that I'd been around was pretty staggering before the show, and I was kind of a mess. And God began to show me that He is life, and He has life in abundance for all His creatures. And I'm like, I'm one of His creatures, and I just began to ask Him about that, and that's where I began to start to find healing for just like my soul with all the nerves and PTSD and stuff like this. I remember on day 50 when everything started icing up really badly. When ice gets about this thick, then the water drops from under it and it breaks and it cracks, and it can sound really loud. And in my area, it sounded like artillery shells. It really did. If a mile or two strip of ice cracks, it sounded like a 155 round going off or something like that. And so much that I walked out of my shelter and I looked for muzzle flashes, but I noticed that I wasn't bothered at all. I wasn't trembling. I hadn't ducked. I was fine. And then I knew something big had changed. And And the second thing God showed me is that, all my life I've been driven to work. Like I worked on the show, I worked hard. And that can be good. But for me, I began to realize that all my life I'd been, trying to earn my place, to the air that I breathe, or favor from God or whatever. And even though I believe that he's good, still some of that childhood mentality is still baked into me, that if you aren't generating positive effect every moment, God might squish you with a hammer. I know that's not true, but it's how my body is still wired.
Right.
And I begin to relax. And I saw a moose walking out there. That moose that I told you about when I was using the toilet, that moose out there. And I was struck with a certainty that God looked down at that moose that he had made, and he was 100% thrilled, happy with it.
Mm.
That it was
Oh, love
there,
that. Yeah.
and it was doing just what he made it to do. And I just had that verse in my mind, God looked on everything he made, and behold, it was very good. And I began to think, why have I never realized that I am also a creature of God like this? That God, can look down and be happy that he created me already, that there's value in that, and that I don't have to necessarily earn the fact that what God created is valuable. And I wish every human would absorb that right there. It doesn't have to be earned.
Amen. Yeah.
There's a lot of people out here suffering from, everything that comes from lack of self-esteem, narcissists in their life, maybe, abusing them, and PTSD. It can all work into this thing where you're kind of worthless, but ain't nothing worthless if God made it and put his mark on it. And if he looks down,
Yeah.
see, this gets me right here. He looks down and he's like, I made it, and it's very good. And I took that in, I absorbed it. And then, like, this doesn't stop the fact that I still have to want to seek God and want to know him. But just that baseline right there that I'll start with, it began to change me, man. It began to change me, to where you don't have to kill yourself in order to earn God's glance at you.
Yeah.
God made what he made, and he's happy that he made it, but still we ought to look back to him and say, then I love you back. That's what we ought to do, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well said.
No,
Man. Well
that's
said. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Where can people go if they want to hear more of your platform, what you're talking about, your books and all that?
Mainly, I hope people will go on YouTube, because I've got a series of videos on YouTube where I discuss after every episode of Alone kind of what's going on, and then what's going on in our heads, the contestants out there, and then some of these things. Especially my latest one has a lot to do with PTSD and healing. And I hope that if any veterans are listening to this, or just doesn't have to be veterans, but I hope people will get into that. So Timber Cleghorn on YouTube, and then hit my website. I'm working on it to get it in better shape to where there's buttons that work. I'm not a websitey type of guy, but go to timbercleghorn.com on my website.
Okay.
And
we'll have both of those in our show description for sure.
Awesome.
So, all
Thanks,
right.
man.
So this is History Channel's Alone Contestant Season 11, Timber Cleghorn. Thank you so much for taking the time to join the show. This was an honor and
awesome.
pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you guys. I've really enjoyed being here. I enjoy your guys' humor and your vibe, and I can't wait if we can meet in person someday.
All right, man. Timber Cleghorn, dude, that went for a while, and I feel like I could keep on talking to him. He's just got a lot of interesting stuff going on. So takeaways, thoughts, what you got?
Oh, the militia camp was interesting. The cameras breaking on Alone, I think that kind of surprised me. Which we can talk about. My question, it took me a while to get to it. Yelled at me
I said one sentence and you jacked it up immediately. Like, how hard is that? Just write it down.
Well, I was trying to keep track too, so I was half listening sometimes because you kept bringing up cakes when you were asking him, and so I was like, are you hungry, Carl? Like, have you not had a cake in a while? Because you're like, hey, have you ever made a cake here? And what did you want a chocolate cake after Alone? And so I think you brought up at least 2, maybe 3 times you're talking about cakes. So
yeah, you're saying okay. So what you're saying is because 20 minutes into the conversation, I was bringing up cakes. Dude, that messed up your first questions. What you're saying? Like I just messed it up. That doesn't chronologically make any sense. What are you talking about?
No, you're asking for my reaction.
Write a question down, read it. Let's go. Away we go. And you're just like, well, I need to explain the circumstances and the setting around the question. Then it's not really a question. And then once I spit the whole thing out, FYI, it doesn't even make sense.
Hey, but you know what's good about a good person, a good interviewer, is I got a good story out of it. So I think I won.
I think he saved that. I think he saved the whole conversation. I think we were struggling through that, and then because he was so professional and polished, it worked out in the end. But I don't think that's.
I'm glad you
us.
said we were. I'm glad you said we were struggling through that, not me. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So what was your
Well-
what was your big takeaways?
I mean, yeah, like the whole, like, I feel like there's some things he was kind of holding back because he didn't want to throw things or circumstances or people under the bus. So I want to know more about the militia camp for sure.
Yeah.
I did like the story about Afghanistan and the fact that, like, basically those warlords do get bribes so you can kind of pass by or help out refugees or whatever he was doing there, and that they would accept the persimmon cake from Walter Mitty. So that was pretty interesting. Let's see here. Other things. The one thing that I meant to ask him was, he was talking about how you have to check in on a loan.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like you have your radio morning and night, and how they're just like, hey, they want to make sure that you're okay. But I was wondering if he forgot to check in, if they would just assume that he broke that thing too. That was my thing.
We'll have to ask him next time, because that's
I
actually
know.
a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they wouldn't send help right away. Like, oh, let's just give him a couple more days. He probably broke it.
Yeah.
We'll check him for a little bit. But
Right.
yeah. I
So,
didn't know
okay.
that either.
Right. To be honest, though, what did he say? He broke 4 cameras? Is that what he said?
Yeah, or like
Okay.
maybe 5 or 6, right? Because he's like, yeah, on the 5th time, but I don't know if he was like,
Okay.
yeah,
I don't know how he's the leader, because I'm trying to be very careful, and I don't use the cameras near as much as they do on Alone. And when I bring it out into the backcountry, I mean, I've smashed GoPros. I've, like, had cameras out and it got too moist and it messed up, the speaker input or the microphone input.
right.
And so I've broken multiple cameras out there, and I'm using it minimally compared to what those Alone contestants are. So I'm actually surprised that they haven't had as many issues.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it was he was just trying to get a good camera shot, and maybe it's just he said he wasn't really familiar with them. Like, he doesn't use cameras a lot, so he probably just wasn't putting the legs down and stir. It was like, that should be good, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, or like
forget
wind. Like
stuff.
I had my camera on a tripod today, and I was out in the backcountry, and like the wind blew it over or something. I don't know. It was like face down when I went to go get it. So who knows? But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just compared yourself to being on Alone again, right? Because you were setting up cameras.
yeah,
Just like
I'm kind of big time. I could film myself for a while. Not really. I don't.
I did.
It's been well established. I do not want to go on this show. I would not last for long.
Yeah, I kind of wonder who would last longer, me or you. Like, is there
You.
cake? Like, would you try to sneak in a cake? I don't know if I could.
No, it's not even about the food. The suffering, I'm good with the suffering. It's the lack of interaction with people. I would like 2 hours and I'd be like, all right, who's around? Who can I talk to?
I know, I'd be the one trying
medical
to get into the other person's
emergency.
camp.
Yeah. Sneaking into camps.
Yeah.
I
Accidentally
would
push
sneak
the
into
red button.
somebody's
Like,
camp, be like,
why are
hey,
you guys here?
like, I've already been eliminated, so you can just talk to me. I'm not gonna tell.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. All right.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Any other takeaways?
No, I was circling back to the militia camp. I was kind of nervous asking any questions about it, because I'm like, are they still around? Because I didn't, like, if they listen to the podcast, like, are our lives in danger?
Interesting.
Do I need to
Yeah.
dim the lights and change my voice on the next podcast? So I was a little nervous.
Incognito. I thought when you said you were nervous, I thought you were gonna say I was actually just nervous talking to him because, like, he's on TV and we're not, and that's like he's a star and we're not, and you just got nervous. Am I right?
Yeah, sure, we could go with that. That's
Okay,
why I was starstruck for my first question. So
That's why you keep on messing with questions.
Yeah.
I think there
I
were a
could start-
couple questions in there. Didn't you say, okay, maybe I got to go back and listen, but like we had a question. So we talked about the questions. We're going to go back and forth asking about his 10 items. And then I asked, what did I ask? I asked him if why he chose the cooking pot to attack a bear when he had all these other weapons. And then you just are like, you don't have toilet paper. Am I wrong? Didn't you just say that? Toilet paper. There's no toilet paper. Like there was no.
Yeah,
no
it was something
question.
like that. Like, yeah, it was like, let's go to the toilet paper. Like, enough with this cooking pot. Like, everybody gets it. It's on
Yeah.
most of the shows, but they don't talk about the toilet paper much, you know.
Right.
So
No, no, I think
yeah.
it was a good question if you actually made it into a question, but you were just like accusing him of not having toilet paper. You don't have toilet paper.
How come you're not packing toilet paper? Yeah.
That's a question. That's a question. You didn't do that.
All right.
Anyway,
I
thought it was funny.
I'll try to get better. I'll try to get better. If we could,
Okay.
let's try to have like not big stars on here, you know, just normal average people. Maybe that'll help. So we're just, you know, you're just booking these
That's-
big stars, and I'm
yeah.
just
We
yeah.
just ask everybody, and we get fortunate sometimes with who we have on the show. I don't know who's going to be next, but whoever's next, you're getting the first question, and you get one sentence. And if you don't do it right, I'm going to make you re-ask it in front of the guest, and it'll be socially awkward.
and let's hope the listeners let's hope that you get both questions on the podcast, because that would make it even more awkward. It's like
Yeah, oh no, I'm gonna leave it. I'm not gonna edit that part out.
yeah.
So
Ben, that was awful.
we got
re-ask. All right.
yeah. We got Alone Trivia coming up right after this. The trail is calling your name. Are you ready? Are you really ready? Our good friend Rowan from Summit Strength can get you trail ready. Rowan uses rock solid evidence to design a specialized training program just for you. There are plenty of cookie cutter programs out there that will get you only halfway up the mountain. Make it to your adventure summit with Summit Strength. The link to your success is always in our episode description, but you can check out all the information you need at summitstrength.com.au/online. It's time to be strong and pain-free for your next adventure. All right, Alone Trivia is brought to us by Teton. We're going to talk about Teton here in a minute because they're part of the giveaway in the tidbit section. So thank you, Teton. And you're going to be able to possibly get a free Teton tent. So here we go. Here we go. Alone Trivia. Ready for this?
Sure. Let's go.
Okay. Number 1. Which location has not been a setting for Alone? A, British Columbia. B, Arctic Circle. C, South America. D, Madagascar.
Oh, I'm torn between South America or Madagascar.
Okay.
Let's go Madagascar. That seems more South America is tropical too, but that could be a lot of different places. Yeah, let's just go Madagascar.
Madagascar is correct. Yeah, that's good thinking, because they try to go to cold places, and Madagascar is the opposite of that. So, and they have talking animals there, which is so that like it's not really alone, right?
Right. So, and penguins. Wait, don't they have penguins in Madagascar too?
They do now. They do now. All right. Number 2. What is the longest anybody has ever had to survive on Alone? Like the longest they've been out there. A, 84 days. B, 75 days. C, 100 days. Or D, they're still out there.
Well, I mean, it depends, right? Because they could still be out there if they're trying to go for the record. But
I know
this one's pretty easy because I actually did it during my research. It's 100 days. There's like, I forget the guy's name, but it was like 100 is like the milestone. What do they call it? Like the golden 100 days or something like that? I forget.
Something like that. Yeah. I don't know what they called it. I don't know if I watched that season, but yeah, 100 days is correct. So you passed trivia. Final question. Which Alone contestant has not been on this podcast? A, Dave McIntyre. He was the winner of season 2. B, Joe Robinette. He was season 1 Alone. C, Brooke Whipple in multiple seasons of Alone. Or D, Jim Baird.
I feel like I've heard Brooke Whipple on here. Who was the first guy? That was Dave, right? Yeah. I think I remember, if that's the one I'm thinking of, I think he was on when you and Derek were talking to him, and he was talking about how he actually gained weight on Alone, and they had to fudge it because he was eating so many crabs or something. So let's go with the last person.
Jim Baird?
Yeah.
Okay, Jim Baird is correct. Correct.
3 for 3.
Which is weird because what you just said was completely made up. So you like made up a story inside your head, believed it, and it worked out for you. But Jim Baird, we've actually invited him a couple times, and we were unable to work out the calendar with him.
Wasn't it the winner though? The Dave?
Yeah.
He won. And he was a Christian guy, right? Like,
correct.
Yeah. If you go back and listen, Carl, he actually talks about it on your podcast.
Yeah,
about
but
how he
Derek
gained
didn't
weight.
talk to him. I talked to him by myself.
Oh, okay.
And we weren't talking
sorry,
about how
yeah.
he gained. I don't think we talked about that. Maybe you're right about
Yeah,
that.
he brought it up. Yeah, he brought it up because he like said like God opened up the heavens and like manna came
Oh, I
with
remember that
crabs
part.
and fish. Yeah.
I think he said God turned the food on or something.
Yeah.
So, okay. So talking about being nervous, talking to guests, he was the first guest we had, I think, from a TV show that was on our podcast. And I honestly, like, I was nervous because I was like, dude, I've watched his whole season. I feel like I know this guy, but he doesn't know me. And so I was a little nervous when we first started. He was probably the first guy I was really nervous talking to as an interviewer. And then quickly I realized I'm like, he's just a normal dude. He just happened to be on the show alone. And then ever since then, that's kind of how I've treated everybody else, and it's worked out pretty well. Everybody's down to earth. Everybody's, for the most part, they're great. They're people that we would love to hang out with, have conversations with in real life. So yeah, but I was a little nervous for that guy.
Sure. Yeah, they're very. I'll have to go back and listen and see what your first question was. You asked him. Like
it was something about like, do you watch my YouTube channel, and why is your alone show better than my YouTube channel? Is that what you asked?
How can you help us make our YouTube channel better, please?
That's right. That's right. All right, tidbits. Okay, we got a couple of things. We got our least favorite survival shows and giveaway. So, all right, give it to me. What's one of your least favorite survival shows out there? There's been a bunch.
Okay. Do you remember what Timber said his favorite survival show was?
Well, he mentioned Survivor. I don't know if that's his favorite.
Yeah, he said he loved that show. I hate it.
Yeah.
So I was
You hate Survivor?
It's just like gang up on them. There's strategy involved. You're not really out there to survive. You're out there to like do more politics, and so it just it just gets ridiculous. And then it's like, oh, you won immunity from this because you can cross over beach balls and not fall in the water, so congratulations.
Okay, I have Survivor on my list too. For me, I don't like to vote people off of anything. I like to welcome people and include people, and if people are on, let's say, a backpacking trip, I want them to finish. I want them to succeed. Like I've used as like a team. And so I want everybody to do well and to have a good time. Now, if you're not getting along with the person, you can just not invite them on the next trip or whatever, but I wouldn't like vote them off. Like something really terrible would have to happen where I'd be like, yeah, I think you need to go home now.
I just think like, so I'd make on my backpacking trips, I don't want to vote anyone off. It's like nobody said anything that like, hey, if you come on Backpacking Blisters trip, you might get voted off. Like,
I know, but that's what Survivor is every episode they're voting somebody out of their tribe or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't want that.
Okay.
I don't like that concept.
No, I get it.
I'm relating to
I'm the same
backpacking,
way.
Ben.
Yeah, okay. I get that. It just made it sound there's been questions where people are like, will you vote me off if I'm not like keeping up? If my pack weight is 52 pounds, will I be voted off? So
okay, so I mean, the way that you say that is like, it's ridiculous, obviously, right? But there's a current TV show out right now where that happens. I think it's called The Summit, where they're trying to hike to the top of a mountain, and on the way up, they vote people off, and they don't always vote off the weakest link. Like my wife has been watching the show, so this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I've been watching as well. We've watched a couple episodes, maybe 3, and there's a dude who's like super strong and super confident, not having any problems, and they just vote him off. He's like a nice guy too, like no reason. You're gone. Like what?
I haven't seen it.
How that ever happened? Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing too well. Let's you're making us all look bad because you're so good. So goodbye.
It's nonsensical. So it's a thing for sure. All right, what's your other survival show though?
Survivor, man.
Really?
I know you. I think you like Les, right? You're a Les Stroud fan.
So we invite him on our show every 6 months, and we do get responses, not from him, but from his publicist, who's like, he's in the middle of filming right now. Like he happens to be literally every 6 months. I don't know what he's filming either, because like he doesn't have new shows coming out. But we're gonna keep on inviting him. He's actually one of
Derek's. Maybe switch it to like 5 months, so it like goes like if you do it every 5 months, it might throw off the.
I know, no, yeah, I started to offset it for sure. It's
okay.
So he's one of Derek's favorite people. So I'm actually about to invite him again on the show, just to probably get rejected. But I've even said like, even if it's just for 10 minutes, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
can we go on
why don't you like
location?
him?
We'll get you.
Yeah, what's
I just
wrong
can't
with what's wrong with Les Stroud?
I think it's like it's realistic because he does. There's times where he has to like tap out, where he's like, "Hey,
Yeah.
this didn't work out." But I think it's just slow. Like it's just I don't know, like the cameras and just the way he
Just
does
boring.
it. Yeah, it just doesn't capture my attention. So sorry.
Okay. Gotcha.
I need more action, more people and chaos.
Well, I think if you watch it now, it makes sense. Like when it came out, it was cutting edge. Nobody else was doing that kind of stuff, so it was very.
Oh,
like,
this was right away. People were like, "You got to watch this," and
okay.
there were times where we just sat at our station and watched TV for 10 hours and never got into it. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I guess what was impressive about him was he was doing all his own editing, filming. He was like making the music for the show too.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he did a lot. You don't have to like it though. It's fine. Okay, so wait, but if he actually does agree to come on, I think we gotta figure out a way to bring Derek out of the cave to interview him. We can't.
Maybe this will get him out of the cave. Yeah.
Yeah, because then you're gonna ask a weird first question. Be like, so Les, so just full disclosure, I hate your show and everything about you. And what do you think about that?
I'd be like, so Les, tell me why I should go back and watch your show because I couldn't get into it. I thought you were boring. We had the most interesting man on television on, and I think you're the least.
Oh my gosh!
No, what if you invite Les and this is the podcast that he listens to first? He's like, well, let me see what the podcast is about.
Yeah,
this
I don't
is
think
a
he's
show
listening.
prep.
Some people do their due diligence for sure, and not everybody does.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's fine. I was a fan of his stuff when it was out, so we're not going to have you on as part of the interview. That's the deal. All right.
Okay.
my second survival show. This is one that I actually refuse to watch. It's called Naked and Afraid, and it's just because it's naked, just because there's nakedness. Yeah. I don't know why that needs to be part of the scenario. That doesn't make any sense to me. So
it creeps me out. It creeps me out.
Yeah.
Not
super popular show.
Being naked. Yeah.
Yeah, super popular show, and I do not get it. I seriously don't get it. So, all right, we've got giveaway Mountain Ultra 1-person tent by Teton. They will send it directly to you once I submit your name and your address. All you got to do to qualify is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or if you've already done that, you can subscribe to us on YouTube and leave us a comment about the giveaway somewhere on one of our videos. Any video, I promise I'll see it. If you've already subscribed to us on YouTube, you can still just leave us a comment and that will count as well. So just leave us a comment somewhere on YouTube on one of our videos, or I guess technically you could get 2 entries if you do both with the Apple Podcast.
Oh, I was going to ask. Wow, you're up in the game too.
That's right. That's right. So that's what I came up with, and that's a Mountain Ultra 1-person tent be sent directly to you. So you've got a week from the day that this episode's released to get it to us. And to be like, again, people are listening to the show in their cars or while they're doing something. People don't always go back and like mindfully, type comments or remember to do that. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of contenders. I think you got a good shot at winning.
I agree. You should put your number. Just tell us your phone number right now. And people can text us while they're driving.
But that's not a way to get an entry in.
No, I'm just kidding.
Text us while they're driving. Why don't you just give me a call right now? We'll just chat. Like I got a long commute to work. I could use somebody to chat with, so that's fine. 7202. Just kidding. Right. All right. That's all I got, man. You got anything else?
No. Just remember, if you are with friends right now, you're not alone.
Have a good week, everybody, and God bless.